Welcome to Dugout Chatter. We are going to see how America's pastime has shaped generations of young men and women into the determined people they are today.
Welcome to Dugout Chatter. So on this first episode, I'm going to dig into a little bit of my background, my playing background. My whole family was very active in baseball. Youngest of four brothers, and we all played. And I'm also going to go through some of the life lessons that playing this great game has taught me. So let's start back around, I'd say 2002. I was 5 years old. And my oldest brother, Ryan, he started playing baseball, kind of brought it into the household. He became a Yankees fan. I think he said he was watching games at our neighbor's house. It was something like that. And our Uncle Nick, he was from Jersey, big time Yankees fan. So that's kind of how our family from down here in South Florida became Yankees fans. My mom's from Jersey as well. So we have that Yankee blood in us. Some of you are going to love that. Some of you are probably going to hate it more often than not. Ryan was a kid during their dynasty in the 90s. So he really grew up watching like the probably last pinnacle of being a Yankee fan. 96, the 98 through 2000. They still made the World Series in 01 and 03. Ryan was, I'd say, the original statistician. He could tell you any stat you wanted to know about any player in the league during the 90s and early 2000s. He knew what a guy was hitting, how well he could field, pitcher's ERA, and his pitch. Like, he could read the back of a baseball card verbatim from memory. Really impressive. How I came to start playing baseball was when I was around 5 years old. I wasn't the most social kid. And my brothers, if you're listening, you're probably laughing at that one. But oddly enough, with all three of my older brothers playing baseball, they thought I should play basketball because I had a decent jump shot. My basketball shot looks really, really ugly. Can make a few threes, but yeah, overall it's not that pretty. So being a shy kid, baseball kind of broke me out of my shell, and it became something that I grew to love a lot. As a kid, I was, well, and even now, still very obsessive with my interests. So baseball, I really dug deep into it, really loved it. And it started with me, like, obviously playing, and then in like my downtime as a kid, I got really into baseball video games. Like, the first big one in my family was MVP Baseball 2005. To this day, I still have an original Xbox and play MVP 05, make my own team, and do owner mode. Me and my brothers still do that. It is, without a doubt, the single best baseball video game ever made. I still know way too much about the 2005 roster, but me and my brothers, and also a feature in MVP 05, was you could draft your team all the way from the big leagues down to single A. And it's still the only baseball game to have a single A team. So you could also do a draft for your coaching staff, your scouts, everything. It was really in depth and ahead of its time for a baseball video game. And I remember one night we were doing a draft and we went through all of it. We drafted our coaches, our players through single A, our scouts, our coaches, everything. And me and my brothers are in the room and there's no light on. And my friend Anthony decides that when he walks in the room and leaves, he's going to turn the light off, and he kills the power and the Xbox shuts off. We just lost our whole draft. It was heated. Not as heated as the house in 2003 when the Yankees played the Marlins, because Ryan is a Yankees fan. My brother Kieran is a Marlins fan. So you didn't want to be there around that time. It wasn't very good. Then a couple years later, around 07, the next baseball video game I remember spending way too much time playing was MLB The Show 2007. David Wright was on the cover. And I remember going to my grandparents' house as a kid, and I met one of my best friends, Michael. And we were actually talking about this yesterday, playing the Show 2007. So we became friends playing backyard baseball and all that. Then we would draft teams in the Show 07. And that was a really fun game as well. So what we would do is we'd switch off the controller every inning. But when it came to the batting lineup, we both had one special hitter that no matter what we were doing, we could always hit with that guy. In 2007, his special guy was Albert Pujols, and mine was Ken Griffey Jr. We just terrorized the league, dropping bombs constantly. Ken Griffey Jr. and Albert Pujols were the ultimate 1-2 punch in the Show 2007. But yeah, David Roy was on the cover. He was saying that should be a Jeopardy question. I agree. No one would get that but us. And as a kid, along that time, I was really loving playing baseball. My favorite position when I was kind of like in that middle school age, like 10 to 13, just before high school, I got really into catching. My oldest brother, Ryan, was a catcher, and at that time, he was away playing college baseball, and he was catching. And, you always look up to your brothers. So I wanted to catch. I had a lot of fun doing that as a kid, and I remember my brother, Braden, he wanted to make me a better catcher, so he'd take me in the backyard, bucket full of balls, put me in the gear, make me drop and block. Like, you got to get better at it, got to keep the ball in front of you, and all that work paid off big time. But then fast forwarding to the time that I got to high school, the coaches, because of my stature, and I was not a big kid my freshman year. I was about 5'5", 100 pounds, soaking wet. At least that's what it says in the program. And well, for anyone who's ever played baseball, we lie in the program a little bit, try to boost ourselves. But the coaches were like, with your size, we don't want you to catch. And I ended up playing second my freshman year in high school. I kind of regret that decision. That's really the only thing in my baseball career that I'd say I'd regret as a decision, was moving to play second base, because I liked catching and I was pretty good at it. Even now in men's league, I still do it. But it actually led me to playing second. I was a freshman. Sophomores kind of got priority of playing time on JV. So I started pitching to find a way to get on the field more. So my freshman year, I discovered I could pitch a little bit. I was more of a junk pitcher, like fastball, curveball, slider, splitter was my main repertoire. In high school, my oldest brother, Ryan, was actually the JV coach. So you know how high school kids are. I got a lot of shit for that. Your brother's the coach. And, Ryan was a great coach. And some of my buddies that were freshmen, they were like, dude, I would have never known he's your brother. He treats you worse than everyone else. And he kind of had to do that, to not show any nepotism. So during my freshman year of high school, I was mainly a pitcher. I didn't spend much time on the field at all, actually, but I pitched a little bit and, showed that I had a right to play and everything. And I dealt with a lot of crap that, your brother's the coach, and it just teaches you, you got to learn to work with difficult people. No matter what, people are going to have crap to say about you. So it's about how you deal with it. So I just had to brush it off to the side, keep working hard, and keep getting better. So that's what I did. Then by my sophomore year, we had a very small sophomore class, on the JV team. We had probably about 5 or 6 sophomores. Then I saw a jump in playing time. I went from just pitching to kind of rotating around a lot of different positions. I kind of became a big time utility infielder. I'd moved from second, short, a little bit of third, caught and pitched a little bit, because we had a team that was a little limited on playing experience. So us guys with more playing experience had to move around a lot. We actually moved one of my buddies who was an outfielder to shortstop, and we became the main set of middle infielders. So yeah, sophomore year, we all got to play a lot, and it was a good time. And in high school, my interest in playing baseball, peaked from really liking the sport to becoming obsessed with it, especially by my sophomore year, because I was getting more playing time too. So it was a little extra motivation for me. So I changed my training regimen a bit. I'd get up at 5 a.m. in the morning before school, work out, run the neighborhood. I had a little tee and net set up in my backyard. So I'd hit every day before school as part of my routine. Then I'd go to school, go to practice after school, then go to the gym after school. I was just obsessed and wanted to get better. And it paid a lot of dividends. I'm glad I did it. It might have been a little burnout. It's kind of also one of the lessons I learned from that too, was my dad told me, sometimes you got to work hard, but you all got to rest, but you also have to rest hard. And that's true. You can overwork your body. And I think a lot of young baseball players, especially nowadays, fall victim to that, especially with the era that we're in now, where it's, you play one sport, you play it year round, you train all the time, and all these new hitting facilities, Rapsodo and all that stuff. You also got to know when your body needs rest, and recovery is extremely important. Then moving over to my junior year. So it was a main core of me and 3 other guys that came up as freshmen and were playing together. So it was really our first year on varsity. A couple of them, got the call up at the end of sophomore year, freshman year. But junior year, we were all full-time varsity players. And that was a really fun year as well. That year, it kind of became my freshman year again, where I was just pitching. And I pitched a lot out of the bullpen, so did my buddy Jacob. And we were kind of like our main relievers. And then I saw a lot of time out of the bullpen as kind of like the main guy, like in first relief. And I had a very successful year on the mound my junior year. And I looked back at my stats. I had like a 2.23 ERA, something like that. But then I looked at my whip. I was like, how the hell did I pitch that good? My whip was almost 2. Like, I was giving up a lot of walks in between, like throwing a lot of strikes. It was the weirdest thing. Like, I'd let guys on, but not give up that many runs. It was really weird looking back at the stats. But anyway, I kind of found my groove more. Like, I can pitch pretty well. And again, I was still a smaller kid. I was probably 5'9" at this time, maybe somewhere in the ballpark of 130 pounds. But I think what made me effective was, especially now looking at this day with the new technology in baseball, is I had a good set of RPMs on the baseball because like I have big hands and long fingers, so the ball probably came off and spun a lot. And then matched that up with my splitter, and then there's just no spin. It kind of knuckled and fell in the dirt, and I could throw a pretty decent 12-6. And one cool thing too, my junior year, I was the only junior who started a game as a pitcher. Only our seniors started the games as pitchers. So I got that one and only start as a junior. It was just like a cool little thing. And actually, I remember one game. The one game I started, it was against American Heritage at American Heritage. And Jonathan India was on their team. He's now the second baseman for the Reds, won the Rookie of the Year in 2021 with the Reds, I believe. And that also shows like the talent level that's down here in South Florida. And I was a smaller kid competing against some guys that were really good, and I held my own. And I did not give up a home run to anyone that year, not until my senior year of fall ball of all places. But yeah, it was a fun year. Found my groove a little bit. So from my senior year, that's again when we started facing a little bit of more adversity that we dealt with. So my senior year, my buddy Jacob, he started in the outfield, and my other friend Zach, he'd kind of switch off and get in some playing time behind the plate and DHing. It wasn't consistent for any of us, and my other buddy Jacob, he pitched, played a little first, but most of the time, and including myself, we were sitting besides my buddy Jacob, who was primarily an outfielder. And the frustration started building about halfway through the season because part of our senior privilege was, lead stretches, home plate meeting and all that. And then one game, leading into one practice, we didn't get to lead stretches. And then the next day, no senior went to the home plate meeting. And after that, like, we were fed up. Like, we were almost ready to walk away and like be done with baseball. And we had a lot of times where we'd meet up and talk about it, like the four of us. It was really difficult. This is our last year together. We wanted to make it count. So after that game, we confronted our high school baseball coach and we're like, dude, what's going on? Like, you're not playing us. And he's like, you guys aren't producing. It's like, how are we supposed to produce if most of us are on the bench? We hashed things out with him after a home game that we lost when a senior didn't get to go to the home plate meeting. And then the next day at practice, like, I give major props to my coach, Nick Franco, for this. He handled it really well. He apologized to us in front of the team, and he gave us our senior privileges back. And then the lineup shifted a bit. We all got in more. So Jacob was still starting in the outfield. Zach became the primary catcher. I got to start at second base, and Jacob kind of became the ace of our staff. And then through that time, we started backing up the talk with like good play. All of us were playing well. We started winning more games at that point. So one of the highlights of that was after we all started playing was one game we were playing at Park Vista. And for those of you who don't know Park Vista, that's the high school Trey Turner went to. Like, a lot of good talent always goes through there. They basically routinely have guys get drafted or go to big D1 baseball schools. So we were playing a game at their house, and they had their ace throwing, James Marinan. Kid was really good in high school. He ended up getting drafted in the 4th round by the Dodgers, and Jacob got in a really good pitcher's duel with him. He threw about, I want to say it was 5 innings, like 1-run ball. And we're like, dude, we're in this. And at that time, we haven't beaten Park Vista in about a decade. Like, Santa Lucia's has lost to Park Vista for about a consistent decade. And we're like, bro, we're in this. We can beat Park Vista at their house. And eventually, I came up later in the game. It was 1-1. and I got a big knock that gave us the lead. And I still remember that at bat so clearly to this day. It was a 1-2 count, 2 outs, runners on. I believe it was second and third. And my first at bat, Marinan threw me probably the most disgusting curveball I've seen in my life. Like, my knees got buckled so hard I almost fell. Like, it started at my head, and I think I turned over, and it was low and away on the black. So I recognized curveball out of his hand, and it was in. And in my head, I was just like, fuck it, swing. And then I hit like a grounder down the third base line. I'm running down the first base line. I'm like, well, we're going to lose this one. And then after I touched first, my first base coach is shaking my shoulders. I'm like, dude, like, what are you doing? He's like, look in left field. And I'm like, oh my God, the ball got through. And then I look over in the dugout and everyone's like losing their mind. It was like the coolest individual moment of my playing career. You know, it's like when you come through for the boys in a clutch situation, that's what you dream of as a ball player. And it was such like a cloud nine feeling. Like, I literally experienced cloud nine. Like, the next inning, I went out to second base, and our shortstop, AJ, was like, hey, McKay, how'd that hit feel? And I was just like, bro, like, who's got the start on this inning, you or me? Like, I couldn't think straight. It was really sick. I mean, unfortunately, we ended up losing the game, but that battle, like, of all of us playing well, how things started to how things were ending, was just incredible. And then it all culminated in our district game against Boca High School. And Boca High School at that time was one of the top ranked teams in the country. Like, the talent down here in South Florida for high school baseball is very, very good. And like, they had kids on their bench signed to D1 schools. And, you know, I actually remember one story my buddy Jacob told me prior to the game. So he's warming up with Zach in the bullpen, and it was kind of like a David Wells story, except he didn't get that drunk the night before. He didn't at all. So he's throwing a bullpen with Zach, and he like is going all over the place. And then Zach's like, Jacob, are you serious? This last game of our high school careers. Like, come on, get your shit together. Like, throw a strike. And he's like, Zach, come on. This is how you want to act on our last high school baseball game ever. And it was just hilarious. Cause then in the first inning, like, Jacob gives him down 1-2-3. And we're like, okay, that was pretty cool. Then like, I think it was Jarrell early on in the game hit an RBI double, and we're like, okay, we're up 1-0. This is sweet. And then, you know, next inning, no one gets on. Next inning, no one gets on. We're like, dude, we got to run a 1-run lead, and we're like pulling up towards the 5th inning, and it was just sick. And I remember in the 5th inning, Jacob gave up a leadoff triple, and we're like, oh shit, here we go. Leadoff triple, 1-run game. This isn't good. And then the next guy like tried laying down like a little squeeze, and Jacob made a good play on it, holds the guy at third, gets him out at first, and we're like, oh, okay, 1 out, that's cool. And field's in the whole time. And then the next guy comes up, he hits kind of like a weak pop-up to shallow left field, and it was to the distance, you know, like the shortstop could have got to it like on a run, but like the left fielder had it coming in, so you're not going to challenge him. And then he's held up at third, and like we're like, 2 outs, all right, you know, infield back, diving bodies. And then suddenly we get out of the inning and we're like, oh my God, we just got out of that. And then AJ got an RBI single, I got an RBI single, we're up 3-0. And then we end up knocking them out in a 3-1 ball game. And we knocked off one of the best teams in the county. It was unbelievable. And I remember after the game, our first base coach, his name was Nate Forsyth, he was just like, boys, we got practice tomorrow. And everyone's fired up. It was a really, really awesome experience. And we were 7-18 going into that game. It was just unbelievable. And the next game after was Park Vista and Lake Worth. And they had a picture from their game about our article because nobody expected us to win. So it was a really big upset, and I still have the newspaper article in my room. It says St. Lucia Suns top seed Boca, and this was back in 2016. And it was crazy. When we ended up getting to go to regionals, and we played Jupiter High School. We lost that game. It was 3-1. It was a good game. Our senior year went out on a really, really awesome experience. And to this day, I still have a good relationship with my high school baseball coach, and he agreed to come on to the podcast as well. And then after that year, everyone goes their separate ways, going to college and such. And Jacob was the only one who really pursued baseball out of the four of us. He played a year at Kaiser. And after that first year, going into that summer, he was playing on a summer collegiate team, and then he hit me up. He's like, hey, dude, would you want to play? And I hadn't really played since we were done in high school. I played summer after my senior year. So I was still fresh enough, and I was like, you know what, dude, why not? Why not try to take a shot and see if a college team wants me? I get picked up somehow. I ended up pitching pretty well in that league, but after that, I kind of just walked away. I was never the biggest kid, never threw that hard. So I decided, it was time to hang it up. For my whole experience, playing baseball competitively growing up, it was great. It taught me a lot about, work ethic. My size is an excuse. I got to compete no matter what. And the best quote I always refer to is Derek Jeter saying, someone might be better than you, but that's no excuse to let them work harder than you. So I always just tried to work as hard as anyone else. Just putting more work in the lab, more time working on my swing, my mechanics in the gym. Just work harder than the people around you to find success. And a lot of it worked out. But then after that summer collegiate league, I feel like this is something that doesn't get talked about enough in baseball, is when you're done, the identity crisis you go through. And I experienced that a lot because a lot of baseball was wrapped up in the problems I experienced as a kid with anxiety and being shy. And it felt like that was happening again because baseball was kind of like my outlet. And then having it gone was just a weird experience. By the time I was done playing, I was still an avid Yankees fan, but I was watching games, and I remember it was around the time Gary Sanchez came up with the Yankees in 2017, and he was setting the league on fire. He had 20 home runs in 60 games, something insane like that. But I remember one game watching him, I'm like, dude, I can't do this. I just can't watch baseball anymore. It just became difficult. In a weird way, I started to resent it because I gave my whole life for it, and I'm done. It was just an odd grieving process because you're also trying to figure out what to do with your life as well, because my buddies moved away to college and I'm the only one still down here, and I'm still trying to figure out what to do with my life. And it was just difficult. But I remember one day I was with my mom, and then one of the radio stations that we listened to down here recommended the Connecticut School of Broadcasting. And long story short, I ended up going there because they had a partnership with Roger Dean, and I actually didn't end up doing that partnership. And ended up working a job as a camera operator filming polo games. And then I found myself working for a radio station after that. So I got into a broadcasting career, and a lot of what I want to do was find my way back to baseball because I still wanted it really, really bad. And the last time I really played competitively when I was 19. So going through work, then I kind of got over some of my baseball grieving, and I felt I felt comfortable if I were to have a career in it. I got over I'm not a player. Not everyone's destined for it, but it's about what you learn, the friends you make, the experiences you have, the accountability it teaches you. Because for a game that's based off of failure, I think it's a perfect sport for most kids to play because it teaches you how to fail successfully. Some days you're going to have it, some days you're not. It taught me a lot of those tangible lessons. Then around the time I was 24, Jacob was playing in a men's league. And then one day he hit me up. He's like, hey, they're looking for pitchers or whatever. I was like, dude, I don't know if I want to go back to it. But he's like, it's free. I was like, okay. I guess I shouldn't turn down free baseball. So I ended up doing that. And I remember the first 2 weeks, I hadn't picked up a ball or swung a bat really in 5 years. We were at the cages, throwing bullpens and stuff. I was like, man, this is really fun doing this again. I'm having a really, really fun time. And the first game I played, funny enough, was at Santa Lucia's. That's where the men's league's at for Palm Beach baseball. So my first game back was on my old varsity home field. And my parents came out. My first game, I turned a double play playing short. I had a really good at bat and walked. So it was really cool being back. I was just man, I'm playing baseball again. And it brought back a bunch of that childhood joy. Like, this is a kid's game. This game makes you feel like a kid. You're just hanging out with your buddies, you know, soaking up the sun, enjoying the game. It was really incredible going back, and I'm so glad I did. Because after I ended up playing the men's league, one day I ran into my old varsity coach, Nick Franco, and, you know, we just caught up. And he's like, how you doing, all that. And after that, he texted me maybe a few days later. He's like, what do you think about coaching this year, like coaching high school baseball? I was like, I hadn't really thought about that. So I pretty much told him, like, I'd think about it. Like, I wasn't sure yet, like, coach high school baseball. My brother did it, and I wasn't sure if coaching would bring the same satisfaction that playing did. But then one day I was still thinking about it. And my girlfriend, I was talking to her about it. I was like, hey, Franco asked me to coach high school baseball. What do you think? And the first thing she said was, I think you should do it. And I was like, oh, okay. So I got on a call with him. He's like, yeah, you can coach. And then being at the field again, it was just amazing. Like, I was back kind of where it all started, in a sense. And, you know, going through tryouts, that was interesting, you know, evaluating players' talents and everything, and kind of finding my groove as a coach. And then as the season went on, like, I remember the first game, it actually mirrored my first high school baseball game. So my first high school baseball game on JV was a road game at Park Vista. First game I coached was that as well. And, you know, going through practice and everything, it was fun messing around with the kids, hitting fungos, throwing a BP. But I didn't know how the game would translate being a coach, but that competitive fire was still there. Like, I was just as involved as the kids were. So that was like, that like solidified it for me. It was like, dude, this is really fun coaching, because you're really invested on winning and losing and like the kids' success, and you want to teach them everything you've learned, makes them better. And I was like, I see why people do this after experiencing it. Like, the experience is just incredible. And yeah, like, that was a really fun season coaching high school baseball. So a lot of that's kind of my baseball journey in a nutshell. Like, I played from the time I was 5 to 19. Then I got in that summer collegiate league. Yeah, I did that for 1 year. And then I ended up coaching and then finding my way back to men's league and playing and rediscovering my love for the game, and then reconnecting with a lot of old friends. I'm really glad I did it all. So yeah, that's my baseball journey. And thank you for listening to the podcast. You can find Dugout Chatter wherever you get your podcast. And if you'd like to see the video as well, find us on YouTube at Dugout Chatter. Thanks for listening.